Happening now. We want to welcome viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number 335 on September 18th, 2024. My name is Jason Neiffer, and I am the Executive Director of the Montana Digital Academy, which is Montana's wonderful state virtual school located on the beautiful University of Montana campus right here in kind of cloudy, rainy Missoula, Montana. And where I'm being joined tonight, as always, directly from Charlotte, North Carolina. Good evening, Dr. Wesley Fryer. How are you tonight, sir?
I am wonderful, Jason, where we received 3 inches of rain night before last in the 1,000-year storm or something crazy. So I am continuing to teach media literacy and STEM at Providence Day School in Uptown Charlotte, North Carolina, and teaching web design, coding, and computer applications / media literacy this year. So glad to join. Apologies for the erratic schedule, most of which is my fault. Hey, it's good to be back. We only have about 1 million articles to talk about tonight. So
yeah, it's funny how it turns out the news didn't pause for us.
I think you could be a park ranger in that shirt at Glacier, perhaps.
Oh yeah,
you look ranger.
I call this my digital learning parker or digital learning ranger outfit. So that's part of what can Brown do for you is the question I ask when I'm in my Montana Digital Academy outdoor shirt.
You could deliver UPS packages. You could work at one of those gift stores in Yellowstone or the park. So multiple possibilities open up just with a change of the shirt. What are we going to do tonight?
Well, you could go to our links at techsr.com/links and find our wonderful Google document, which we've been curating for weeks on end to try to bring you the latest in artificial intelligence, educational technology, and other news. Tonight, we will consider, I would imagine, some AI stories, maybe one or two, Apple, some political election news, media literacy, social media, the media industry, some miscellaneous, and we will end tonight on our Geeks of the Week. Dr. Fryer, is there a topic where you'd like us to aim our perceptive lenses on to start off this evening?
I think we should start with AI, but I'm going to say, did you listen to Ethan Mollick's podcast that he posted today from Google LM? Google LM, that's the Google one, right? That you've tried.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know he covered it, and that was actually one of the articles I have, but it's a stunning development in these tool sets.
It's incredible, and probably someone gets tired of us, getting amazed at technology. But yeah, if you don't follow Ethan Mollick, just drop everything, quit, just go do that, because he is absolutely Jason is a great, guru of AI, but in terms of the prolific Substack posting and updates, but Google LM is, a beta experiment, sort of like I don't know if it's a passion project. Stephen P. Johnson, who's one of my favorite authors, is a lead collaborator with them. And so Ethan uploaded his entire book and other bits of content, and he had to make a podcast. And it has 2 people talking about his book that there's no way I would know this is not real. And It sounds so good. And it just absolutely blew my mind. So my Geek of the Week is AI related. But folks, if you are not playing with these AI tools, full stop, that is what we've got to do. We've got to play about with them. We've got to share about what we're doing, which we're going to do on the show tonight. It is just absolutely stunning. And this doesn't happen to me every day, but I heard that today. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this was AI generated. So.
Yeah. And that was exactly my reaction last week as well. And in fact, our evening off last Thursday gave me the opportunity to dig into this tool a little deeper. But what's super interesting about this Notebook LM feature? Well, first of all, let me give a quick description of Notebook LM. Notebook LM is a free service from Google. I don't know how they make money on it, other than they probably train off the data. But what it essentially allows you to do is create what it calls a notebook. And a notebook is a vast collection of resources, from 1 document to 50 documents. And I think 50 is the limit. and you can upload PDFs, you can upload text documents, you can upload Google Docs, including Google Sheets. You can also upload Markdown documents if that's your style, and it puts it into an interface where you can start asking questions of those documents. And that's not necessarily a new phenomenon. Certainly, that's the way a custom GPT can work. And there are dozens, if not hundreds, if not thousands of tools that, are about like talking to your documents. But it does automatically create cool things like a table of contents, or you can ask it to help you study the information. But the feature released last week is a one-button click. What's interesting about it is that one button click it tells you it's English and 2 speakers. It generates an audio summary of it. And I think you nailed it, Wes. You'd have a really hard time kind of telling the difference between that and a traditional podcast. And when I showed my wife the functionality last week, that sounds exactly like The Daily, which is the morning New York Times podcast that talks about the news. And first and foremost, like, it feels like Google has been hiding this extraordinary technology, because I feel like if anyone else had even the makings of what this is potentially able to do, they would already be releasing, cruddy beta versions of it just to get ahead in this space. But it tells me that Google is much, much, much more caught up than I expected. And I have to say, like, I don't dislike Gemini. It's missing some features for me still in comparison to ChatGPT. But if all you have access to is Gemini, or if you happen to be one of the Google users that gets it for free, or if you're in an institution that uses Google and they buy up in Chat or in Gemini Advanced service, I think it's going to do most of what you want to do. But and it's just it's so interesting. Last week we have a Google notebook or a notebook LM at work that we're working on for teachers, and it's basically all of our documentation, all of our guides, all of our handbooks for teachers and students and parents and site facilitators. And the podcast it created was stunning. It talked back and forth in a really very conversational, I would even argue, hard to detect AI tone that it was amazing. And the one other comment I'd make before I stop rambling on about this, Wes, and give you a chance to talk again.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. Is that the one of the things that I picked up on was, it was English 2 speakers, right? That's what the button says. That tells me that there may be a possibility for 3 speakers, 4 speakers in the French language, in the Mandarin language, in Korean, which of course itself would be pretty extraordinary. But the way I was thinking about it, in fact, I was having a conversation with a couple of trusted colleagues at lunch, and I said, it would be almost like, you upload 5 research papers or 5 studies and basically create a 20-minute panel at a conference, right? And Notebook LM has always been super interesting to me, because this idea of creating a source for the information so it's much, much less likely to hallucinate, I think is just a stunning idea. And it would have been a killer feature for me in especially undergraduate history classes. I'm blown away.
Shout out to Peggy George, who's with us live. We may have my dad with us too. We have a second live viewer. I think we're probably going to get to the new version of ChatGPT and the breakthrough that it represents in terms of logical, chain reasoning. But I'm going to make a comparison here. So I have not read the book, but who wrote Blink? This is my brain. Known psychologist Malcolm Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell. The Power of Thinking Without Thinking. Okay, so this idea that we make some snap judgments. When I was down in Florida with Shelley, we were going to the Johnson's or Kennedy Space Center conference. The Biden-Trump debate was on. I literally listened to 10 seconds of it, and I turned it off and I said, this is crazy. He is going to have to drop out. There is no question at all. It was a blink thing. And I'm not, anyway, it was one of those things there. I didn't need to listen to more than 10 seconds to have an absolutely definitive opinion. Same thing today. I listened to less than 5 minutes, probably maybe it was just 2 minutes of this podcast. And I am telling you, it was so good. There is absolutely no way, if I hadn't known that this was AI created, that I would have had a glimmer of hint that this was AI created. And so this is where it's both exciting and incredibly scary. Because yes, you're right, Jason. Think about the research of this. I'm thinking about my Teaching the Conspiracies, series for adults that I've been doing with the Media Education Lab, taking the transcripts, taking these articles, taking books, putting them all in, and saying, "Hey, I'd like a 20-minute podcast talking about historic conspiracy theories and parallels to modern day," or whatever. I mean, the sky's the limit. But I just can't believe how realistic it was and utterly human-like. I mean, it wasn't something that I would have been able to discern was created by a robot. And so, yes, for our elections, for our lives, for advertising, for everything, we've grown. Those of us, well, we're old people here on the show, but Photoshop and talking about, oh, you can't believe what you see in the magazine covers or, online. We've all kind of known that, but I don't think our heads are ready for the creation of audio content and video content, which will be, soon just as good. So it was stunning. And folks, my life has been changed many ways by Jason. One of them is, he recommends tools, and he talked about Ideogram, weeks and months ago. I use Ideogram every single week now, almost every day. And I use that to create the bulk of my images. I don't mess with other things because it's just so good. I mean, if something else is better and whatever, I'll compare. But it's absolutely fantastic, incredible. And so my homework tonight is I'm going to be playing again with Notebook LM. It's one of those tools that I have played with, but it has obviously made some seismic improvements. And so, yeah, we're gonna talk about some other articles, but that was one of my biggest jarring events of the last couple of weeks. And again, it's both good and bad. I mean, mainly it's good, but when you realize how human-like it is, and also how nuanced, I mean, what are the possibilities for curriculum creation here, right? And being able to, hey, I think I'd like to, offer my students a supplementary podcast for just this particular week. And I'd like to offer them a text summary, and we're going to have a, Quizlet. We'll take any PDF now and just make a Quizlet. I've been, doing that a couple times with my kids today. So, or this week, or whatever, this year.
Well, yeah. And I also note too, that this is also a really incredible step forward for accessibility. And the thing, and whether you need it because of a disability, or you just prefer to listen to something as opposed to reading something, it really doesn't matter either way. The bottom line is that we've had a kind of fits and starts approach to really great text to speech tools. And I will mention there is one that my organization does license now. It's pretty good. I wouldn't say it's life-changing, but it's better than the stuff that was before it, right? But the natural sounding voice there tells me that either they've purchased a technology or they've developed a technology that really is next generation forward. And if you listen carefully to those podcasts, the thing that I keep thinking about is, listening to the Notebook LM podcast, is that they've added so many kind of fake natural things into it. I keep thinking about the pauses, that you could hear sometimes some sniffling in the background, like they've added some natural something. I will say I was also very entertained by the fact that there's a man with what seems like a man's woman and a woman's voice in the podcast. and they're about 50-50 on who takes the lead. Like in most of, or not most of, I've maybe downloaded 10 or 12 of these between my various notebooks. But it's about 50-50 who takes the knowledge lead in this. But the thing I thought was really funny at first was that the first two I listened to kind of sounded like the male voice mansplaining all the articles to the woman on there. But I think that they trade off, and it feels like it's about 50-50. But I mean, it is done in a way to suggest that they're talking through the issues, right? And what I thought about is a kind of a virtual panel, right? Stick 5 pieces of research in a notebook LM and then have it generate a conversation. In fact, I might just do that for the heck of it, as kind of proof of concept. But it's pretty crazy stuff.
I think we may be able to do that live, and maybe we can try it. The article you dropped in from 9 to 5 Google on September 11th, Notebook LM's new audio overview turns your notes into a mini podcast, reports that Sundar Pichai demonstrated at Google I/O being able to, quote, join the conversation with these AI voices to steer it and to ask questions. There was a real-time transcript and cool circular animation with the experience more live than just getting an audio file. So, ladies and gentlemen, if it's not available right now, apparently it will be soon. And we'd have to do, like, I don't know if you remember Soundflower, which is like this audio channel thing or whatever, but like we'd have to figure out how to get that audio fed in, and maybe just, what is it, open broadcaster or whatever. We could figure it out how to get that audio channel fed in here to StreamYard. But basically, we could have a podcast conversation with AIs and real time and sound so real. I mean, I don't know if that, just thinking about doing that, I mean, talk about touch the future, because I think I've mentioned this as well. Like, I'm talking to my phone via ChatGPT's app every week, if not every day. And it really is a game changer. And, and pretty soon these things are going to look like humanoid robots. They're going to be in our house, and, we're all going to be
totally
creeped out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, Wes, in that spirit, you may have noticed that I just shared a tab if you go to the director interface.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's going to be able to broadcast audio.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hey, deep divers. Remember all those conversations we used to have about smartphones?
Okay, so what this is my dissertation. So I uploaded it to Notebook LM. This was early Notebook LM days. And as part of my, holy dog, I can't even believe this exists, I created this podcast summary, or it created this podcast summary.
Hey, deep divers. Remember all those conversations we used to have about smartphones?
Mm-hmm.
Like, are they going to turn kids into zombies or unlock some secret learning potential?
Yeah, it's funny how that debate never really goes away, does it?
Right. But what's interesting is that there's a whole new layer to this conversation now, and it's got to do with Siri. That voice assistant we all have in our pockets.
I see where you're going with this.
Exactly. Turns out researchers are starting to explore how Siri could actually be used to boost student engagement, especially in middle school science classrooms.
That's wild. I mean, I use Siri for everything, but I never really thought about its potential in education.
Me neither. But the research is pretty fascinating. The dissertation we're looking at today focuses on a school district where every single student has an iPad, right?
Okay, so we're already in a pretty tech-saturated environment.
Yeah, so...
This is incredible. This is incredible. Yeah. Our daughter has caused me to revisit some things that I wrote when I was at the Air Force Academy, and right afterwards when I studied in Mexico City on this Fulbright. And I was just, I was rereading some stuff, but thinking about breathing life into your own writing, but then also, infusing that with other kinds of research. Of course, also think about, again, if people can join the conversation and steer it where they want. Oh my gosh, did those voices not sound absolutely human? I don't think I detected any robotic elements there.
No. And, and again, the banter is a little annoying, right? Like, I never thought about that, or man, that's super fascinating. But I mean, that's prompt based, right? You tell it to do that.
And we'll be able to create personalities. You're going to be able to create a whole prompt, and you're probably going to be able to upload your voice, Jason and I have hours and hours of our voices on this show. But you're probably not going to have to do hours and hours because, 11 Labs said you only needed, 30 seconds or some, incredibly small amount of voice to be able to do a deep fake. So
yeah,
man.
yeah. And people like ourselves that do have a pretty lengthy trail of digital footprints, which I believe is a Dr. Fryer phrase from back in the day. If you are, we've left, significant digital footprints on YouTube, about 350 episodes worth. And, that's more than enough to, next week on EdTech Situation Room, fake Dr. Fryer and fake Dr. Neiffer talk about the news.
Man, I'm going to see. Okay. I can't wait to play with this. All right. Oh man.
How do you even talk about anything else, right?
Okay. All right. Can I jump to something else completely different that also is totally wild?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Miscellaneous category today. Ars Technica. 14 dead as Hezbollah walkie-talkies explode in second deadlier attack. So, we're not a political show. We're not here to cover the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza, but this is very technological because the subtitle here is "People aren't sure what devices will detonate next." Evidently, the Israelis somehow figured out yesterday to get thousands of pagers that were in the hands and the pockets and purses or whatever. They were in the possession of members of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Thousands of them blew up. There was a new attack, which was now evidently two-way radio walkie-talkies that injured more than 450, killed 14. I think yesterday there was like 35 killed. And the people are just scared, telling everyone to turn off all their batteries. They don't know if the phone's gonna blow up. This is a crazy hack, and it reminds me of Stuxnet, which apparently was a joint Israeli, CIA initiative where they were able to use a flash drive and get, basically spin the centrifuges in Iran out of control and set the Iranian nuclear program back, years and years. It was really a milestone in terms of cyber attack. I have never heard of something like this in terms of thousands of devices blowing up like that. And I didn't even know that was possible. So your thoughts?
It was pretty stunning news to read for sure, but I mean, I just think that, well, first and foremost, the sheer amount of shenanigans that happen in intelligence agencies regarding technology are extraordinary. And just a reminder from just 20 years ago that there was all sorts of evidence the CIA was putting backdoors into common home Wi-Fi routers, right? And doing some pretty extraordinary things. I still remember reading a couple of those reports that literally showed they took apart the same router that was sitting on the desk of the computer I was reading on. It's not universal, but there is a lot of money and time and effort that goes into digital shenanigans. And and I certainly am not claiming one way or another the ethics of this or the wisdom of doing this, but if that's a thing, right, especially if they were able to do it with devices they hadn't otherwise altered, that would be a pretty extraordinary situation for sure.
Yeah, just crazy. Okay, well, we've gone through about a third of our show, and we've covered 2 articles. So I think we should probably talk Apple stuff. Did you get a new phone? I heard a rumor you got a new phone.
Oh, Dr. Fryer. So actually, I got lots of Apple stuff to share tonight. So first and foremost, new iPhones released last week or announced last week, and in addition to some fancy new AirPods, and they also released 4 varieties of the iPhone 16. And I'm not claiming to be an expert on this, but I have read enough and heard enough in the last week that I feel like I can say with some confidence. The major shift here is that they made the 2 lower end phones much closer to the higher end phones, right? So there's 4 models: the Pro, the Pro Max, the 16, and the 16 Max or gigantic or something. But the idea is that either with the slower chip, you can get a bigger or smaller screen, and with the the Pro chips, you can get a bigger and or smaller screen, and the chips are good enough that they'll be able to run Apple Intelligence. And so, new colors this year. I will admit that every time they put out kind of a sage green or wintry green color, I just fall in love with it. And they didn't offer it in the Pro model, and I did upgrade to a Pro Max phone. I wasn't necessarily going to, but my 15 Pro seems to have some problems. I have to restart it every couple of days because I can't get a 4 or a 5G signal. I'm experimenting with all the new features in Sequoia, the newest OS 10 software. I have some things to say about that too, because I have Apple Intelligence turned on across all my devices now, and it is it was important for me. Some of the features that didn't work as well as I wanted to seem to work better after I rebooted the phone, and so that suggests to me that there's either a hardware problem or perhaps a software problem. But the battery life was also starting to tank as well. So yeah, I did go ahead and upgrade. Luckily, I'm on T-Mobile's super duper mega plan, and so my wife was able to get an upgrade to an iPhone 16 from 13 for at no cost. We'll get credits back the next 2 years, and I got credit for my phone back. I basically paid $200 for the Pro Max because the plan we have allows us upgrades it's either every year or every other year. So that'll be here Monday, and I'm looking forward to it. But I have heard from others that this was considered to be a boring release by Apple, and that a lot of people felt like that Google had perhaps caught up with their Pixel phones. I will admit that I would like to play with a new Pixel phone because of the Gemini integration to it, which seems pretty sweet. But from what I've seen so far, I really like where Apple Intelligence is going. So I should go back to you, Wes. Impressions about the releases?
Well, I only watched about a third of the event. As always, I will recommend people definitely watch the intro.
Yeah.
It's always, a great example of storytelling. I use that with a couple of my classes to just, talk about lots of accessibility and also just life-changing, life-saving technologies that Apple has across their product lines, in 2 minutes in that quick little video. I was very impressed with the AirPods. This idea that, number one, they can be hearing aids and actually medically viable, hearing aids.
Yes.
But then they can also dampen ambient noise. And so like the normalization of seeing folks with AirPods is going to be really interesting. And if there's something too loud, it can, like a concert or whatever, they can actually protect your hearing. So I don't know. I have not used an actual set of AirPods. I don't think I have a third party one that I've ordered that's not noise canceling or whatever. So I think, that may be in my future at some point. I wonder though about Apple Intelligence and whether it's underwhelming. I mean, the thing that it is clearly doing is it's integrating the AI directly into the apps that people are using every day. So it's not like, hey, I need to go to ChatGPT and do this. No, it's just your email app. It's just your notes app, whatever. It's integrated right in there. And it's also really not, it's not like this empty chat window, like, what do you want to do? I mean, it's very prescriptive and helpful and templatized as far as, how you can improve that writing, what you can do, with the AI. So yeah, I think that it wasn't groundbreaking in terms of something that we haven't seen before, but the normalization and the pulling of these capabilities into Apple's normal apps and the regular productivity flow that people have is a really big deal. Of course, I'm more in the Google productivity side, even though I've got an iPhone, so I will be more interested in the integration of those apps. But I think that everybody wants a groundbreaking new product and something that just blows everyone's head off or whatever. Just like it's a new product line, it's a car,
Yeah.
It's not that kind of thing, but it definitely represents, again, from an accessibility standpoint, and then just I think the health stuff, and I don't know, my watch has been cracked for about 3 months, and I need to go ahead and upgrade that one. So I don't know. I'll be torn as I have before whether to go with Swappa and something that's newer but still used, or I ended up whatever. I think I have a iPhone 13 now. When I jumped up to it, and I use the heck out of it. I use the video all the time, and anyway, the speed, all of those things. It's an incredible tool to create video and media with, and of course they shoot the entire event on iPhone, so that's
Yeah.
that's the fact.
Well, and I'm still an incredible believer of ecosystems. I think that just makes a huge difference. And for me, that's where Microsoft is clearly in last place. It would go Apple, then Google, then Microsoft for me. And sure, you could argue that Windows machines are cross-platform and they work nicely with both, but not as well as the Pixel phones work with a Chromebook, and as well as the MacBook worked with a phone. Would you mind if I jumped into Sequoia now?
No, please do. Just give us
Yeah.
all the Apple goodness.
So the one feature I will talk about that I really like on Sequoia is that you are able now to basically broadcast your phone or be able to control your phone on your laptop. And what I mean by control is that the phone has to be if it's active, it'll say wait till it's not active, but then it will allow you to basically jump on your phone. It pops up a little iPhone sized screen on your screen, and you can control it with your mouse. And what I have immediately loved about this is that first, I'm not as tempted to pick up my phone, and it shows the notifications in your OS 10 notification panel. You can click on those notifications. It takes you to the screen on your phone via your computer. And there's probably a half dozen or so apps that I've used in the 48 hours I've had access to this feature that I won't ever pick up my phone for again. For example, I use Authy for two-factor authentication, and that's an app I have on my iPhone. I don't even need to go to Authy anymore. I can just with the phone, I can just have that sitting in my pocket and I'm able to get to it. It's a really cool feature. It plays the audio through your computer as well. So I had my AirPods in, my nearly 4-year-old AirPods, and it worked great. I played Spotify through it. I can get a phone call on my laptop anyways, but I did talk on the phone with my AirPods, and it was just a really stunning feature. And there's a version of that with Pixel phones and Chromebooks. It's good, but this is much better. The interaction's pretty stunning, and I haven't even tried a video yet, so I don't know if that works. I'm assuming it does, because that seems like a really a cool use of that. But yeah, super awesome stuff.
Wow. So between an Apple event, well, I guess do they even have people live in there? Because they're just showing a video, right? Is there a live event you go to? There is, because the journalist,
for the developer conference, right? Because that's a developer conference. But I think for these more promotional pieces, no, I just think they're broadcasting out a video. Actually, I think I do know this. They will sometimes have a live audience in the Steve Jobs Theater, but it's Apple people, like it's Apple staff.
Oh, well, but do journalists get to do hands-on with them afterwards? I'm thinking they must have something where they have
I'm sure they
journalists
do.
Yeah, I was going to ask between the two events, Google I/O, but hey, I guess it'd be Google I/O since it's the true live event. Well, Peggy, you're on an SE, so it is time for you to upgrade, I do think. But we're talking in the chat. The return on investment on Apple products is just fantastic. So yeah, I think, and I don't know. I mean, if you're not I don't know, the video and the way that the processor, what would you say, Jason, would be a reason to upgrade from the SE in terms of features on the phone?
The cameras are a lot better, but assuming you go to a 16 that has Apple Intelligence on it, I do think that software is going to be a real value add, and we'll talk about that in a couple of moments. But if the software, if that kind of functionality that we're going to talk about is worth it, I think it's definitely worth the upgrade. I don't know if if I wasn't having problems with my phone, my iPhone 15, I'm not entirely sure I would have upgraded. That's what punched my card, was that. But the new iOS 18 will go down to the iPhone X. Actually, I don't know if it's the first edition SE. You might not be getting updates anymore. Then I probably would update.
Yeah. Okay, where do you want to go to next?
Well, let me talk a little bit about Apple Intelligence, and then we'll get the Apple beat out of our systems. If you upgrade to 18.1 developer beta, and so you can do this in any supported Mac or iPhone or iPad. And a couple of weeks ago, I upgraded to the iOS 18.0 beta. So I've been working on these versions, or for the early version, and there's cool features. Nothing that's mind blowing to me. Some better access to pull down menus so that you can do things like turn your Bluetooth on and off, and there's more control kind of features on there. I think that's called night shade, or the shade, or I don't know the terminology anymore. That's all fine. Good updates, feels pretty stable, great. So yesterday I was told that if you update to 18.1, either iOS or iPad OS or Sequoia, the new version of OS 10, then you can get an option to opt into Apple Intelligence. So I did that yesterday. The pop-up, 2 days ago, the pop-up came up. I opted in. I'm assuming I have to wait for a little while, and 10 minutes later, all three of my devices were downloading the updated versions. And I have to say, I didn't even find or see the generative AI features right away, because they're just in a context menu. You just right click in a space where you can write, for example, and it brings up a menu it doesn't look like a big deal at all. But if you are in a space where you're like in a Google Doc, for example, it does have a kind of almost a help me write style menu. It's called, or no, that's actually I'm literally mixing up Google's and Apple's. But there's a writing panel you can bring up that will rewrite something for you. It will change the tone. It will check for grammar, and it does all the kind of generative AI things. That's cool, right? And Siri seems slightly better, or will actually answer questions now. I did notice that I was talking with Siri on the way home today from work to test it out in my car, and I did notice that Siri was slightly more likely to make human speaking ticks, which I thought was an interesting choice on Apple's part. But and you have to have all your stuff in Apple stuff to be able to talk to it. So the email features they showed off with Apple Intelligence earlier this year, you're going to have to use the Apple Mail app. And I do not like the Apple Mail app, as it turns out.
I don't know.
But the immediate killer feature, or the feature that I think tells me that this AI stuff is going to wiggle into our lives whether we like it or not, but it's the subtle stuff that I think is really interesting. Like, it now reads your notifications. It collapses all of your notifications from a single app into one notification with a summary with it. So yesterday, I'm driving in my car, going to Helena, going to hang out with the legislature and chat with the good folks at the Educational Interim Committee, and Apple Intelligence is turned on. I pulled over for gas and looked down at my phone, and I had 7 neat summaries of a Google chat that involved a crew from work that went back and forth, I had someone contact me on Teams with a couple of links, and it just summarized in 2 lines what those links were, and then a series of text messages from my mom that it also summarized those. And that little step is a knowledge navigator. It's exactly what Apple promised us in 1987 when they were talking about the future. This is the John Scully days of Apple. And we've talked about this in the past, that knowledge navigator that can look at your email and tell you which ones you need to pay attention to that you've received in the last 12 hours, that's available now, essentially. And it's not as flashy as ChatGPT. It's not as flashy as Anthropic or Ideogram or some of the Copilot tools. But those little pieces are really going to change how we interact with information.
And it gets to core productivity, core tasks like that. That's absolutely seismic. So a couple thoughts. I guess Grammarly is getting Sherlocked, basically, because I don't know why you're going to subscribe to Grammarly anymore if all of this is integrated. I mean, you can for a while because a lot of people are not going to have devices that are going to support Apple Intelligence, but once you do, all these kinds of, hey, let me help you edit that, let me proof that, all that stuff is going to be just baked in.
Yeah, and in fact, Wes, it's funny you should say that, because last night when I was kind of reading before going to sleep, I saw an article that pointed to an open source Chrome plugin that is basically, and you give it an open AI key, it's basically a Grammarly knockoff. So and you can buy bulk Grammarly, bulk OpenAI APIs for well, I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but I have 4 or 5 places I have an API key now that I plug into stuff all the time to play out with. In the last 8 weeks, and I use these tools every single day, my sum total across all 6 or 7 tools has been $8. So there's, and again, this is high-end nerd stuff, right? Like most people aren't gonna. In fact, this Chrome plugin that I'm talking about isn't even in the store, so you have to put it in developer mode to get it to work in your browser, and that's a little sketchy for me. I wouldn't do that with either a personal or work account. But you're not right. This weekend, I'm gonna use one of my Play Google accounts and load that bad boy up, because it's just such a supercharging feature to stick into a whole bunch of existing productivity tools.
And when you think about that kind of function coming to the different tools that you use, I have used Slack a little bit, but I have not been on a team that's really Slack focused, but I've heard about what a burden that can be, especially if you take some vacation time, some time away, and you come back and there's just all these messages and you catch up on all that. And like the cognitive load of that, just email, right? Just coming back to your email when you've been away for a little while, depending on your job and your situation. I mean, it can really be overwhelming. So if the AI is good enough to not rampantly hallucinate and to help you prioritize, make sure you are not, missing important messages, you're responding in a timely way. It's just like this supercharged assistant that would be a dream. I don't remember if I've heard that knowledge navigator metaphor, but yeah, this is I like where Apple is going with this.
Yeah.
And I don't think that you would necessarily want this to be some kind of, splash in the pan or just really amazing. Oh my gosh, look at this. It's the integration within the existing tools, the existing workflow and productivity. So I 100% agree. I think those kinds of changes are transformative, and what you just described about today's technology, sounds great. So
what a world, huh?
Oh man, yeah, definitely. Well, where else should we go? Any other? We got what, about 15 minutes?
Why don't we talk a little bit about some of the media literacy and social media news? So 2 quick articles. First and foremost, Australia's Prime Minister, this is according to Engadget on September 10th, is trying to ban social media for children, like a straight up ban, right? And according to the article, is that they're when they say children, they mean probably someone as young as 14 or as old as 18, so 16 or under, 15 or under, 14 or under, and Again, a pretty draconian step for a variety of reasons, but I think that they're starting to become a pretty heavy focus on, the toxic state of social media with our kids. Now, to be clear, I believe that Dr. Fryer and I made this call years and years and years and years ago at the beginning of the podcast. We call it the tech correction, that the necessity of social media to change or be changed, right? Like that's one of the things that we've been kind of observing since certainly the social media shenanigans of 2016, 2017. But the bottom line is that I do think changes are happening, and I have an article about that here in a moment. But I think a lot of people perceive that this is a desperate enough situation that an all-out ban for whole swaths of a population could absolutely be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to find this podcast that I just finished listening to today. Yeah, there it is. You listen to Tech Policy Press? Is that on your list?
No.
Okay, really good podcast. This one is called Free Speech versus Sovereignty, and so it was from Sunday. And this was a lot about Brazil. I don't think we haven't talked about Brazil in the Twitter ban,
No.
have we? Okay, this is huge. So Brazil, and it's really, I guess, a justice who's speaking for the Supreme Court in Brazil, has been kind of having a war with Elon Musk. And Musk has refused to take down some content of folks that had tried to mount an insurrection in Brazil in 2023. Musk and Twitter/X have been very inconsistent, I guess, in their application of moderation and takedowns for different countries, depending upon the political context, etc. But Brazil has taken the dramatic step of deciding not only to block X or Twitter nationwide, but to also impose a steep penalty if you use a VPN to get around the block and access it anyway. And so this has taken millions and millions of X or Twitter users offline, and it's caused a huge hoopla. And so this conversation, which is called Free Speech versus Sovereignty, is an outstanding discussion of this. Paris Marx, who is a Canadian tech critic, wrote a post. This is something else we haven't talked about that's really important. His post was Pavel Durov and Elon Musk are not free speech champions. The actions against Telegram and Twitter X are about sovereignty, not speech. And we haven't said this, but the founder of Telegram, who is Russian originally, but has all these different citizenships, and I guess President Macron, gave him under some special little rule that France has. If you're going to contribute to the culture or economy of France or something, they can give you citizenship. Basically, billionaires can get whatever they want. He has all these different citizenships to include French citizenship, but he got arrested in France. And he had refused and bragged about how Telegram, his messaging service, which is based in the Middle East, he's Russian, but he's based to servers and everything in the Middle East, wouldn't comply with takedowns. And we're talking about, child pornography and really, really bad CSAM stuff that, platforms generally comply with authorities when they're asked to do this. So I really recommend Tech Policy Press. I recommend that conversation. And this is super important, right? We've talked on the show a lot about a fractured internet. We talked about that a lot with China and this idea that, oh gosh, if Iran and China, are blocking these things, then we don't have this global internet. Well, the point that Paris Marx is making, and Justin Hendricks is the host of the episode, countries have the right to regulate things in their country. And this idea of free speech absolutism is kind of ridiculous because, look, countries can pass laws that regulate things, and that can affect commerce, it can affect communication, it can affect a lot of different things. And so while it does seem draconian and some people are like, oh my gosh, Brazil, it's somebody standing up to Elon Musk and this idea of free speech absolutism. And so I would just really commend that conversation about sovereignty and speech. And there's a lot there. So we're having some pretty big things happen with respect to tech platforms. And Telegram, is a encrypted messaging service. And if you are a policeman, a police in security services, you're in the police, you're military intelligence. You don't like criminals being able to hide all of their communications, and so there's all kinds of criminal activity that has been using Telegram, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. So, any opinions about the arrest of the Telegram head or the banning of X Twitter in all of Brazil, Jason?
Well, I did read an article that said that I can't remember. I think it was Blue Sky the next day received a large number of new users.
And Zuckerberg's been a huge beneficiary of all the around.
Threads for sure, right? What I would say though is that part of the point of the internet was to provide, free speech, right? Like the internet was created in part with the idea that you could take down a machine on the internet network and it would just figure a way to route around it, so you didn't have to worry about having centralized nodes of information. Philosophically, that's still what the internet is somewhat about. And I know they pull this off in China for sure, but it's one thing to take one platform down. It's another one to take down multiple platforms, especially if there are open source versions like Mastodon that would be able to be set up very easily. So yeah, certainly interesting development. And I did learn a lot more about the threat of Telegram after that news broke. And in fact, I read several articles about the background of that. All pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, definitely. On the social media front, announcement. Let's see. Where's the Taylor Swift one? This is politics elections, I guess. Taylor Swift cites AI deepfakes in endorsement for Kamala Harris. So, we have been holding our breath, so to speak, on the show. I think a lot of people have, thinking that we're going to have a lot of deepfakes. AI is just going to really be used in devastating ways in the elections. That has not really happened yet. But Taylor Swift, I guess, was concerned about some AI-generated content that had already misrepresented what she supported politically. And so she says the simplest way to combat misinformation is with the truth. So there are a lot of Swifties around the world. And I guess, in August, this is interesting. In August 2024, former President Donald Trump posted AI-generated images on Truth Social, falsely suggesting that Swift endorsed him, including a manipulated photo depicting Swift as Uncle Sam with text promoting Trump. So, anyway, this is an AI social media election, related article, and we are just not very far away from the election. So I thought that was interesting. And again, I've been pleased that we haven't been overrun with just a huge tidal wave of these deep fakes. But like we talked about at the beginning of the show, hearing the podcasts and how good these are. The thing is, it may not be Taylor Swift and a presidential candidate who's doing this. This can be somebody at your school. This can be an authority within your town. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of ways that folks that want to be deviant and seek to foment chaos are going to be able to use these tools. Well, we got about 7 or 10 more minutes. What else would you like to hit? We've got only about 100 articles we haven't talked about.
Yeah, I know, no kidding. Let's do a couple more AI articles. Well, let's talk about the new open AI model. It was announced about 24 hours before the model was actually released. There was announcements, and the earliest ones I read said it was coming soon, and then suddenly out of nowhere, it seemed like the new model was released, and so. This new model is you may have heard it referred to as Strawberry. That was a code name that was going around for a little while, but it has reasoning abilities, is what they're saying, and it's interesting because they gave it a new name. This is O1. It is way slower than the regular old ChatGPT 4.0, which we've talked about several times on the show, but it uses what is kind of like an internal prompt, where they call it chain of thought prompting, kind of walk ChatGPT through a scenario to help get logic. Well, it does that without it. And I've maybe spent maybe 20 minutes on it the last 4 or 5 days, and it's pretty good. And what I like about it is that it on things like factual questions, it feels like the quality of the answer is better because it's kind of working through some stuff in its big weird goobery cloud brain before it spits it out. So what's your impression so far, Dr. Fryer?
I have not played with it yet. The things I've read, I think we may have the link wrong on that one, because the Verge article was the one I was trying to get, and then I ended up with an Atlantic one. It's the kind of questions that we're asking that's such a big deal. So there are some different tests that I think there were math tests and other things that people were being given or were giving to AIs, and they weren't doing so well. And humans don't do that well either. But this new model was doing a lot better. I don't know if we have this article in the links, but I read that OpenAI was going to be banning people who were asking this new model, Strawberry, whatever the code name is for it, to explain its thinking. Anyway, it's this idea of it sounds like it's looking inside the box. It's slowing itself down. I think I heard Ethan Mollick talk about this too, or maybe it was a different podcast, but it was saying that, instead of just getting the first immediate response that the LLM creates, that there's actually value in, just like our brains, when we think about it a little bit and we process it, and it's not just blurting out the first thing that comes into your mind. So my understanding of this is it is slowing down the process, so it's not going to just blurt something out that it will generate from things that it's ingested before, but it is iteratively analyzing what it's coming up with, and it's able to solve problems that it was not able to solve before. And so it's supposed to be a very big deal, a very big leap forward. But it depends on the kind of questions that you're asking, and it probably also depends on your knowledge of what these models were doing previously to be able to compare them. So it's fascinating. And I mean, right now this is a fork, so they're two different models. I think I read that ChatGPT 5, when it comes out, whenever that will be later this year or whatever, is probably gonna merge both of those capabilities together. But it's so fascinating to me how the ways that our human brain works, and these neural networks and machine learning. Again, when I interact with these, it is just so much more already than a fill in the blank, just predicting the next word. No, this is a lot more than that. And anyway, I'll be interested perhaps to play with it a little bit, or just to hear other people. I'm still finding Claude to be one of the best tools to use, especially with teaching materials. I taught a lesson this last Sunday, and I was, I did the side by side with ChatGPT and Claude. Really, really pleased with the results that Claude is getting. So I'm not planning. My playing is going to be with Google Notebook LM this next week, but I'll keep an eye on these new models from ChatGPT.
Yeah, and I'll also tell you that I've kind of reserved a couple hours for Saturday morning, because there's a video about making AI agents using a variety of kind of open source software and platforms. And an AI agent would be something that you give it input, or it's checking input, and then it does something with that information, process email, write responses back. And I'm to the point where I'd like to learn more how that might work, because I can start to see scenarios in which it would really help me with my workflow.
Here's an idea for a collaboration. This could be a professional development. I think it would be absolutely fascinating and worthwhile to co-create a prompt together with colleagues that could then be employed later to, assess student work or create lessons or do standards alignment, or I don't know. You can figure out what it is. But yeah, the formulation of that prompt, being able to have documents that you're going to feed it, that to me seems like such an important piece of this puzzle. It's not just, hey, I'm going to go up to the chat and just ask a question and get a phenomenal result. I mean, maybe you are, but some of the best results come when you're iteratively working with it, but then also really honing that prompt, and I think bringing your resources and the things that the persona you wanted to take, the ways that you want to shape it. So is that something you all have ever done, like in a workshop? Or I guess you're building custom GPTs and stuff, so you guys are kind of already doing that at work somewhat.
Yeah, we are, and I'm not prepared to talk about it like here, but we've got some really cool stuff we're doing in the instructional design space. I have made, for example, deriving objective test questions from a reading is one of the things we do, and ChatGPT does that really well already, but that's not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is provide scientifically and scholarly driven instructions for the bot, so that it's not just doing it to based on its cloud brain. It's using RAG, which we've talked about in the past, the ability to provide it resources so it's less likely to hallucinate. That's something we're doing with that, and I'm really excited to chat about this with my wonderful colleagues in the Virtual Learning Leadership Alliance when we get together in a couple weeks, because I want to see, have I been mad sciencing something up in Missoula, Montana that's unique, or am I just discovering what everyone else is discovering? But it's pretty interesting stuff, and I'm quite smitten with the prospect of what these tools can do.
Can we foresee a possible article and some publications related?
It might be, yeah. I'm really bad at that part of the sharing in the world, but I do think that in at least I don't know if I had a lot to offer in regards to newness before AI stuff. I feel like my brain clicked into this a little earlier, perhaps, than my brain has clicked into past things, but. I think that we need to start talking about what that looks like, and then we have to ask the questions of whether we're comfortable with that or not. Instructional design is so difficult in parts because if you're really building the best or optimal learning environments, it's actually quite complex. And it's one of the reasons why I think there's a fair bit of distance between amazing instructional designers and just instructional designers. And I've met effective varieties of both, but I do think that there is there's something to AI being a pretty great thought partner in helping an instructional designer do some pretty amazing things.
And especially being able to sort of crowdsource as an organization your pedagogy and your philosophy of learning and teaching, and then being able to have that thought partner come alongside whoever you would like to share that thought partner with. That's an incredible capability. Okay, I know we need a geek of the weekend, but did you happen to listen to the Hard Fork podcast from last week?
I listened to the first two parts, and I think you're going to talk about the part that I listened to.
Yeah, the Yuval Harari part. Man, I want to really commend this to everybody. So Hard Fork is New York Times weekly podcast, comes out on Friday. Casey Newton and Kevin Roos, and this one is called Do You Need a New iPhone? So hey, here you go, Peggy. This is just for you. But the part that's really good is Yuval Noah Harari, AI Fears, and the Hard Forks Crimes Division, but it's the conversation with Harari. So man, I hadn't thought about this, but he was saying that supposedly in Israel right now, either targets for the Israeli Air Force are being 100% selected by AI, or they're being significantly augmented and recommended by AI. And they were talking about a dystopian future when an algorithm literally decides whether or not you're going to get a bomb dropped on your house that destroys your house and maybe kills you and your whole family. That is, I guess, a reality today. It's debatable again how much of it's AI, but I really felt like this was a good conversation about the fears that we have around AI. It is super interesting that he's a historian and kind of an accidental AI expert. but you did maybe want to read his book. So you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, and the stories he was telling about the first several decades of the printing press, that I've taught both world and European history before, and that was really as a teacher, I felt like that was such an important moment. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about the profound nature of that. And also, when I speak today on technology, I like to remind people that the printing press, arguably the most important invention of all time, it took 100 years to have any big impacts, right? And we're talking about big impacts with AI in a matter of years. Actually, I should say that's not entirely fair, because AI has been in the works for 7-8 decades now. But the bottom line is these new tool sets that are being released, they're making impact almost right away. But he then told a couple of other stories. That's why I do want to read his book. And I know that this particular gentleman comes with some controversy in some circles, so I like jumping into a bit of a spicy intellectual argument for sure. But the bottom line for me is that he talked about how a lot of the early printed materials were misinformation and disinformation. And if that's not, a hint that this is nothing new, and that, all of our technological evolutions typically go to shenanigans, for lack of a better term, is, I think, important and maybe a perspective of history.
Well, regrettably, we're going over the time a little bit. I think we should probably Geek of the Week it and get out of here.
Okay. Fryer. Hey, Fryer. Dr. Fryer, what would you like to share tonight as your Geek of the Week?
Okay, I have already shared this one once, but I just have to basically extol it and tell you just how incredible it is and what a game changer. The tool is called Descript. And Descript was recommended to me by AI because as I was finishing a book chapter on audio interviews this summer, I was using kind of like a Google LM, but I was doing this with ChatGPT. Here's all my chapters, here's all this writing, here's my transcript of this 45-minute audio version of this, and I used it to basically write these chapters. I said, what am I leaving out with podcasting? It said, well, you need to use Descript. So the other link that I have, my wife Shelly and I started a podcast when we became official empty nesters in January of 2023. So we recorded our 29th episode on Sunday, Fall Traditions and Memories. But I went ahead and threw it into Descript, edited it, cut out all of the filler words, went ahead and made studio sound quality with a click, but then got this description, this time-stamped, 20 different, maybe 15 different sections of it, but then the whole transcript with my name and her name and all of this. And I went ahead and just made a blog post. We have the podcast off of her Wesley Fryer website. It's just incredible. I mean, to be able to create that, even considering that a draft, and you can edit that some more, but it's so good. It just blows my mind. And I think I mentioned maybe that my daughter had gone to France, or our daughter had gone to France, and she made these recordings and we still had them. And so I put those in, and she's been using that. She's at the Air Force Academy now, with the French translation side by side with the English, and it's just really good. So Descript is incredible, definitely worth checking out. I am paying for that. That's one of the tools I'm paying for. And I'm proud and excited to say, and this is the first time to announce this. Oh gosh, I need to tell that other story. PodCamp CLT coming to Charlotte, North Carolina on December 7th. I have got the space reserved. I think it's probably going to be $25 for the day. And it is going to be hopefully an excellent opportunity to network with folks that are into podcasting, learn about new podcasts. Spoiler, I will predict there will be probably some sessions on Descript and other kinds of AI tools, but it was absolutely fantastic. And I'm doing a crazy overshare, but I told Jason I would share this story. This is the email I received today. Hi, can you tell me more about the blurb below? When did this happen and in what class? Or was it a group of students? We got this as a story tip. And here's the blurb. Sixth grade students have made a groundbreaking discovery by successfully extracting dinosaur DNA as part of their studies on the prehistoric world. This remarkable achievement, which mirrors the scientific advancements seen in popular culture, is the result of months of meticulous research and cutting-edge biotechnological techniques under the guidance of Dr. Wes Fryer. The students are now exploring the implications of their findings and are eager to share their discoveries with the broader scientific community. When asked how our students are able to accomplish what no other scientist has, Dr. Fryer commented, "Life finds a way." Okay, I think this was an AI creative writing something. I have not gotten a response from the person who sent this to me today. I talked about mesosaurs and Jurassic Park and some things last week in class and shared some videos with kids. I think that is the weirdest email I've ever had. So
that's a pretty darn weird email. I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. But I mean, yeah, this is the way it works, right? Like the shocking amount of human sounding garbage that can be generated now is extraordinary. And what were you quoted as saying?
That we extracted dinosaur DNA just like Jurassic Park.
Right. What'd you say in the last line? That we found a way, or
life finds a way. That's a Jeff Goldblum quote straight from Jurassic Park. I mean, that's straight from Jurassic Park. So
life finds a way. The Dr. Fryer story.
So to be continued.
Wow.
I'll follow up and we'll find out. But I mean,
yeah,
it's just got to be an AI created writing thing that somebody did. So anyway,
yeah, pretty exciting stuff.
That was my most ridiculous geek of the week ever. So apologies to everyone.
Well, I just have a quick one to share. I know I keep talking about going off and getting an open API a key and doing cool things with it. But the thing I have to share here is that you can install what is essentially ChatGPT directly into Google Docs with an API key. And so it's not quite the same thing because it's got kind of an interface it utilizes, right? But it will rewrite text for you or do a bunch of cool things with ChatGPT directly in your Google Docs. So if you're a Google Doc person, that's really a way to kind of insert that tool directly so you don't have to copy and paste stuff into ChatGPT itself.
Okay. I think this is our longest show ever. But hey, we've been, absent for a little while. So, but
yes,
people, you're getting
said it all.
You're getting more
That's
than you're
what
paying
comes
for,
down to.
folks. Yeah, that's right.
Hey, Dr. Fryer, where can the people find you?
I am still at wesfryer.com, and the site is not down nearly as much because I have finally deleted a whole bunch of old sites that I still had on my web server, and I'm thrilled that it's not down. So yeah, wesfryer.com/after if you would like multiple channels to be able to connect with me. How about you?
Hey, I'm at AIcentrist.com, but here, this is the Get It Situation Room. We're a once-a-week podcast. Most of the time we're on Wednesdays. Occasionally we're on Thursday. Once in a great while we're on Tuesday, and then sometimes we just miss it all together. So we're sorry to our sponsors that sometimes it doesn't come out weekly, but we hope you get value out of the conversation anyways. To be real frank, we do it because we like talking with one another and hope that our viewers get some information that helps them. And I know we have consistent viewers because they come up to me at conferences, which is pretty cool. But we're on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard. What did I say that right? Mountain Time, yeah, and Eastern Standard Time, sometime in the middle of the night UTC. We hope to see you next time in the Situation Room. Until then, stay safe, stay savvy, and have a great night. Take care.
Good night, everybody.